I make only 400 grand a year. I should make more than that. I wish I could get out of this middle class nightmare.
Get the f*** out of here before things get ugly.
What are you? You're from YouTube, right?
TikTok, and you're taking advantage of me. Give me that f***ing phone.
You're digging your, what?
I'm from the Bronx. Don't mess with me.
Some people become internet famous because they worked for it. They studied the algorithm, hired editors, bought ring lights, and reverse engineered every trend until something clicked. And then there is Joshua Block, a guy who became famous because he stood in Times Square and sang the Alicia Keys part of Empire State of Mind with the emotional range of a parking meter. Joshua Block did not try to be entertaining. He did not study what worked. He posted videos of himself eating crickets, dyeing his tongue purple, and lip-syncing to songs he clearly could not hear in his head. And the people came anyway because there was simply nobody else on the platform quite like him. His deadpan stare, his rigid posture, his complete indifference to the fact that millions of strangers found him bizarre. It all worked, at least for a while. Then he turned 21, met two men who saw money, where others saw a person, discovered alcohol, and the story that once looked like an unlikely underdog success became one of the saddest and most avoidable slow-motion collapses TikTok has ever produced. This is the full story of how the self-proclaimed King of New York went from a Times Square billboard to pancreatitis. Joshua Block was born on August 7, 2001 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. His childhood was defined early by loss. His mother developed ovarian cancer when he was young, spending around 4 years on chemotherapy before passing away in 2015, when Josh was either 13 or 14 years old.
New York.
His mother had developed ovarian cancer, and she was on chemo and lived with that for about 4 years. And she passed away in 2015.
She had a different personality. She cared about people. She did things. When we were kids, she would take us to the carnivals and stuff.
His father attempted to step in, but struggled to provide adequate care, and it was Josh's grandfather, a man named Vincent Lisa, who eventually took full legal custody and relocated with Josh to New York City. That move, from Virginia Beach to one of the most densely populated and socially intense cities in the world, would turn out to be the inciting event of everything that followed.
His father tried to take care of Josh best he could, but he was having a lot of difficulty. So I got legal custody of Josh.
It took a little getting used to, moving from a different state. But once I did, I kind of liked it here more than I do in Virginia.
Josh is on the autism spectrum, a fact confirmed publicly through a small documentary made about him early in his rise. His autism shaped the specific qualities that made him stand out online. The flat effect, the stilted delivery, the genuine lack of awareness that he was being watched and judged in a particular way. People could not fully tell if he was performing or simply existing, and that ambiguity was the engine of his early appeal. As one YouTuber who covered him put it, the growing fan base was largely composed of people who just made fun of him, seeing him in the same light as any other TikTok lolcow. But that was all Josh needed. He had been trying to build some version of an online business since high school, listing himself on LinkedIn as the CEO of 2 t-shirt storefronts and a tech support company called Joshua's ATT Corp, all of this starting when he would have been around 12 years old. The ambition was real, even if the execution was largely fictional. It was established early that Josh had always seen content creation and entrepreneurship as his exit from a life that had not been particularly kind to him. What he could not have predicted was that the exit he found would eventually become its own kind of trap. Josh uploaded his first TikTok in June 2019 at 17 years old, posting from his grandfather's kitchen to almost nobody. His early content included candy reviews, lip-sync videos, and dancing clips. And while the views stayed low, a small community of people who found his robotic delivery and expressionless face genuinely fascinating began to coalesce around the account. What made his lip-sync videos especially compelling was not that he was good at them, it was that he was spectacularly, consistently bad at them in the same specific way every single time, flapping his jaw out of rhythm while maintaining the expression of someone receiving a dental bill. It should not have worked. It absolutely worked. His first real viral moment came in October 2019 when he posted a video eating crickets with the same expression a person might use to announce a tax filing deadline. That video caught enough attention to make him take the platform seriously. He began uploading constantly, looking for the next thing that would catch. In October 2020, he posted a video explaining that pandemics tend to occur every 100 years years. It gathered nearly 2 million views. Days later, he dyed his tongue purple using Jolly Ranchers, walking viewers through the process in the same matter-of-fact tone he used for everything else, and that video hit 10 million. His channel quadrupled its following in the month of October alone. He had become a normie magnet, pulling in people who had no context for who he was and no framework for how to categorize him, but who simply could not look away from whatever was happening on their screen. He tried music during this period, releasing a 47-second song about the pandemic on Spotify in December to 2020, and following it up with a love ballad about coffee and boba tea that somehow collected over 130,000 plays. Neither song was going to win awards, but both of them worked, at least by the metric of getting people to talk.
I remember 2019, living our best lives. New Year's Eve came along, looking forward to 2020. It marked the new decade. Everything was fine till March. Toilet paper shortage, quarantine, masks, social distancing.
The inflection point came in March 2021 when he filmed himself singing the Alicia Keys portion of Empire's State of Mind in Times Square, surrounded by bystanders who ranged from baffled to delighted. The clip pulled over 30 million views and transformed him from a niche TikTok curiosity into something closer to a genuine internet celebrity.
New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of. There's nothing you can't do. Now you're in New York.
By May 2021, he had rented a billboard in Times Square to advertise his own TikTok channel and stood in front of it calling himself the king of the concrete jungle. The billboard alone could have cost anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 for a single day. How he afforded it remained something people speculated about, but the image of this deadpan, expressionless kid in a captain's hat with his face on a Times Square screen became one of the more absurdly iconic moments of that era of TikTok.
Will inspire you. Let's hear it for New York.
2 interviews with the Sid Talk channel gave him broader visibility, producing quotes that entered the community lexicon immediately. The declaration that he had been banned from the Gucci store, the assertion that 69 was not the king of New York and he was, the insistence that he charged fans $50 for photos because otherwise they would get famous off him for nothing. That last one in particular said more about how his ego was developing than anything else in his catalog. He was not wrong that people were getting content out of him. He was just drawing the wrong conclusion about who the joke was on. In the summer of 2021, while Josh was still riding the high of his Times Square moment, a fan filmed him fishing near the Hudson River. After catching a bluegill, Josh threw it onto the pavement and stomped on it, not once, not in a panic, but repeatedly, while wearing the closest thing to a genuine smile anyone had ever seen on his face. The video was not posted on his own channel, but it circulated rapidly. This particular moment still gets under people's skin. It is not just that he stomped on it, it is that he looked happy doing it. Josh was not the most expressive person by any measure, so when a visible positive reaction appeared on his face, it always communicated something real. The fish incident communicated something that a lot of viewers did not want to see. The reaction from both his existing community and the wider internet was immediate and largely negative. The clip made its way to Reddit forums and YouTube channels. People flagged the account in large enough numbers to trigger a temporary suspension. For a brief moment, it looked like the World of T-shirts era might be over before it had fully begun. His response, posted to his backup Starbucks Club account, was the kind of apology that somehow makes everything worse. He said the fish was already dead. He said the person filming had not paid his camera fee and therefore should not have been recording. He framed the entire backlash as a coordinated cancellation attempt. He did not appear to understand, or did not care, that the problem people had was with the act itself.
People are upset about a leaked video of me stomping on a fish. First of all, the fish was already dead. The person who recorded me without my permission. They didn't pay the cameo, so they weren't even supposed to record me, but they posted it to set me up, so that they would have an excuse to try and cancel me. I did not kill anything. The fish was already...
A second apology on the Starbucks account fared no better. It was less apologetic and more whiny than anything, with Josh spending most of the video pleading for his account back, rather than addressing why people were upset in the first place.
It was a wrong thing for me to do, to stomp that fish. Please, just get me my account back. It was my livelihood and they just took it away.
The most revealing response to the whole incident came months later in a different context entirely, during a live stream after he had started drinking. Josh made what appeared to be the closest thing to a sincere apology the fish had ever received. He was clearly intoxicated. He said he was sorry, that he hoped if he died he would not go to hell, and that he was sorry for stomping on that fish.
For everything bad I did. I'm sorry. Please, if I die, don't send me to hell. So sorry. I'm so sorry for stomping on that fish. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll never do anything like that.
Whether it was genuine remorse or just the uninhibited rambling of someone deep into a bottle is impossible to know. But the fact that alcohol got closer to the truth than any sober press release he ever issued says something important about the person he was becoming. The most important date in the World of T-Shirt story is not the day the Empire State of Mind video went viral. It is not the day of the billboard. It is August 7th, 2022. The day Joshua Block turned 21 and had his first legal drink. He has not really stopped since. What started as a social thing, going to bars with people, loosening up enough to film in crowded places, quickly evolved into something else entirely. Within months, alcohol had moved from occasional social lubricant to the central organizing principle of his daily life and content. People tuned in not for the deadpan singing or the candy reviews, but to watch what Josh would do after a few drinks in a crowded New York bar with strangers and a camera pointed at him. There's a clinical reason why alcohol hit Josh the way it did, and why it escalated so fast. People on the autism spectrum are statistically more likely to develop alcohol dependency because alcohol reduces social anxiety and makes interactions feel manageable in a way that nothing else does. For Josh, who had spent his entire life navigating social situations that did not come naturally to him, alcohol was not just a party accessory. It was the first thing that made the world feel less overwhelming. The numbers that the World of Alcohol Tracker, a TikTok account created specifically to document his consumption, eventually assembled made those words feel like an understatement. On an average day tracked during the latter half of 2023, Josh consumed enough alcohol to put his blood alcohol content at 0.31, well past the medically defined blackout threshold, having started drinking around noon. For context, a BAC of 0.08 is the standard legal limit for driving in most of the United States. Looking at a full month of December's 2023, the tracker found that Josh spent 40% of the time at or above the legal driving limit, 66% of the month with any alcohol in his system at all, and approximately 9% of the month in a clinical blackout state. Extrapolated to a full year, the numbers suggested he spent around $18,000 on alcohol and consumed more than 575,000 calories from drinking alone. Those numbers do not describe someone who parties too hard. They describe someone in the grip of a severe physical addiction, one that carries serious medical consequences, and that would eventually produce exactly those consequences for Joshua Block in documented, filmed, publicly circulated form. Into this environment stepped Michael Quinn, a man somewhere in his late 40s or early 50s, who had inherited a hot dog company called Feltman's, and had spent years trying to build his own social media presence with a grand total of around 720 followers to show for it. He found Josh on the streets of New York, recognized an opportunity, and inserted himself. Quinn positioned himself as Josh's manager, taking a percentage of his revenue in exchange for a role that by almost every account from people watching closely amounted to following Josh around, encouraging him to drink more, and filming whatever happened next. He also used his proximity to Josh to try to grow his own profile, dragging Josh into stage drama with other online figures and setting up ventures like the World of T-Shirts New York City tour. The tour was advertised as a $50 walking experience, but was, in practice, a guided bar crawl, led by a man who arrived already intoxicated. The website promoting it described the experience as unique and immersive exactly 5 times. The Google reviews were more specific. The tour averaged 1.7 stars. One reviewer described Josh arriving at the starting point having already urinated on himself. Another described it as paying to watch their elderly dog get hammered. These were not outlier reviews. They were representative of what the tour reliably delivered week after week to people who had handed over $50 with some expectation of receiving a tour. The World of T-Shirts subreddit turned on Quinn almost immediately. A TikToker named Curly Daddy 101, who had previously been friendly with Josh, made a video directly accusing Quinn of having the financial resources to get Josh real help and choosing instead to use him. His exact words were that Quinn had probably done irreversible damage to Josh's life. Quinn defended himself in a string of now deleted TikToks, claiming he was actually moderating Josh's drinking. The timeline of Josh slamming 100-proof banana shooters first thing in the morning. During the same period Quinn was publicly making these claims, told a different story.
They're very good. Don't tell me what to do. I'm the captain of the ship. You do what I say. The audacity. What does BANNED mean on Tinder? I went on Tinder, it says your account's been BANNED.
What made Quinn especially damaging was not just that he encouraged the drinking, it was that he systematically cut Josh off from anyone who might have pushed back. As Curly Daddy 101 pointed out in his more detailed follow-up video, the sign of a manipulator is separating someone from their friends, their good influences, whatever that is, and that is exactly what Michael Quinn was doing.
A manipulator is separating someone from their friends, their good influences, whatever. That is what Michael Quinn is doing. He is making sure that Josh now no longer has any contact with me. He's making sure that Josh is separated from anybody that could potentially take him away from you, Michael. And that is a sign of a manipulator slash abuser.
Quinn eventually faded from the picture, his TikTok accounts deleted, his connection to Josh severed, but the damage he had done in terms of normalizing the drinking, building a content brand around it, isolating Josh from people who might have pushed back was already done, and his replacement was going to be considerably worse. Jason Itzler, known online as Mr. Based, entered Josh's life initially as a pest. He was an IRL streamer who had been trying to get Josh's attention for months, showing up at his tours, pestering him on the street, and generally making himself impossible to ignore. Josh's first response to him was to throw a drink on him.
I didn't do anything to you.
Scram!
Can I be your friend?
You can't come on this event. Scram!
I'm not coming on your event. I didn't take your hat. I could have taken it, you know it. I didn't do it, I'm a good guy.
I didn't accuse you of it.
No, everyone told me to take your hat. Now you should be my friend.
I
have a small YouTube channel.
You have to leave.
And you're a very large TikToker.
You have to leave.
I'm on my knees. Please help me. Please help my channel.
You have to leave.
I'm begging you, help my channel.
Hey, come on.
Get him.
Get out of here, man.
Get him.
You didn't pay for this event, man.
Get him. Get him.
Mr. Based had a history that preceded his involvement with Josh, and that made Quinn look almost benign by comparison. He had run an escort agency, had been arrested on multiple occasions, including for money laundering and drug-related charges, and had been involved in a civil case connected to the death of a young woman named Julia Suni in 2010 under deeply troubling circumstances. He was not a manager or a mentor. He was a former pimp who had identified a 22-year-old autistic alcoholic as a content opportunity. Under Mr. Based, the content became more extreme, and the meltdowns became more frequent. The text-to-speech donation system used in their joint live streams was effectively a remote detonator for Josh's anger. Viewers would pay small amounts to have antagonizing phrases read aloud, knowing exactly what the reaction would produce. Mr. Based also took complete financial control over Josh's streaming accounts. When someone tried to set up streaming independently on Josh's phone, one of Jason's associates immediately deleted it. The income from those streams went through Mr. Based. Josh was the content, Jason was the business. The streams Mr. Based hosted became escalating spectacles, crowded bars that recognized Josh on site, text-to-speech triggers designed specifically to provoke him, a manager who kept the camera running regardless of what was happening to the person on screen. And throughout all of it, a moderator from the platform itself eventually had to contact Mr. Based directly during one stream to tell him that having someone with Josh's medical profile potentially die of alcohol poisoning on a live stream was not something they could allow. Mr. Based looked at the camera, shrugged, and handed Josh the drink back anyway. No piece of World of T-Shirts lore has more cultural staying power than 4 words: put the fries in the bag. And understanding where it came from is the key to understanding everything about Josh's relationship with his own image. The phrase originated when Josh, during one of his early drinking era videos, insulted a fast food worker with that exact instruction. The internet immediately reverse engineered it as a taunt aimed back at him, implying he was unemployed, broke, or beneath the status he was claiming for himself. Josh began treating it as a slur. His reactions escalated from irritation to screaming to physical aggression, and the more extreme his response became, the more the phrase spread.
You put the fries in the bag. I'm gonna kick your butt!
She wants her.
What makes this especially revealing is Josh's own explanation of why it bothers him so much. He has said across multiple streams that being told to put the fries in the bags implies he is not successful, and he cannot tolerate that implication, regardless of what is actually happening around him. A man who cannot afford his own tacos on a collab trip, screaming that he makes $400,000 a year, is not someone who has made peace with where he started. It followed him to Germany, where a crowd of young men recognized him and started chanting it before he had even introduced himself. It followed him to Canada. It followed him to Ireland, where locals greeted him with with it in the streets. It followed him to Japan, where things escalated beyond a catchphrase, into something with real legal consequences. One of the most extraordinary clips in the entire World of T-Shirts archive is a recording from a small restaurant, where a fellow streamer said the phrase to Josh so many times in a row, so relentlessly and without pause, that Josh's reaction went from anger to screaming to something that genuinely looked like physical anguish. He was not performing, he was suffering, and the camera kept running because that was the product.
Put the fries in the bag.
Shut up!
Oh my God. Josh, put the fries in the bag.
Put the fries!
Put the fries in the bag, Josh. Put the fries in the bag, Josh.
Yeah! I've had enough!
The Japan trip was where things crossed a line that even people who found the content entertaining had trouble watching. Josh was recognized constantly, had multiple public meltdowns captured on video, by bystanders rather than by his own team, meaning there was no spin possible and no editorial control over what got out. One clip showed a Japanese citizen performing a citizen's arrest, physically restraining Josh and marching him to a police station after a street altercation. He was released with a warning, told to behave, and he did not. The next thing he did was get out of a taxi and call the driver an immigrant in a derogatory tone, and that driver's own country while being a tourist. Then more meltdowns, then more fries in the bag, then he bit someone.
I can't breathe!
A fellow streamer in Japan came across the tourists Josh had bitten and interviewed them. One of them showed the camera the damage. Josh had taken a real bite out of this person during a street altercation and simply kept moving, because that is the world the streams had built around him, one in which consequences were always for other people.
Oh, he is? He bit me. What the f***? He bit me. Last night we're out with Joshua Block. He bit me.
Shortly after returning from Japan, Josh was in a shopping mall when things fell apart, in a way that even his usual chaos could not contain. The full details remain partially unclear because the incident was largely unfilmed, but the general account describes an altercation at the mall while he was severely intoxicated, followed by his condition being too impaired to process normally at a police station, followed by a direct trip to the hospital. The diagnosis was pancreatitis, an inflammation of the pancreas directly associated with excessive alcohol consumption. If the condition becomes chronic rather than acute, it does not resolve. It becomes a permanent feature of the body that worsens with every subsequent drinking episode. His body was not issuing a warning, it was issuing a diagnosis. His response to being released from the hospital was to threaten to sue them if they did not let him out, and then once out, to immediately accept a drink back from Mr. Bassett, hold it while agreeing not to open it, and open it.
No, I didn't need that.
August 7, 2001. Joshua, Dallas, 8th grade. He almost please get these handcuffs off.
The clearest picture of what this looked like to the people who actually loved Joshua Block came from a recorded phone call. A person pretending to be Michael Quinn called Josh's grandfather, and the grandfather, who apparently held some genuine fondness for Quinn, spoke openly. He described being deeply worried. He said Josh's pancreatitis would prevent him from ever being able to drink the way he had been drinking. He said Josh was keeping the family at a distance because he knew they would push back against what was happening. He said this was not the kid they had raised.
For, like, clout.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know he throws some amount of money. I don't know how much. But the other is Base called me, you know. Did you know that?
No.
He called me and he said, I'd like to do a live stream with me, Josh, and you. And I said, no, I won't do that. And he said, well, I'll pay you for it. I said, you can't give me enough money. And I told him to stay away from Josh. The policemen were over here. I had 2 policemen over here, Michael. So I don't know what's going to happen. With his pancreatitis, he'll never be able to drink like he does. You know that.
Right.
I mean, he shouldn't drink at all, and he's got to change his whole lifestyle. That's not the kid who brought up.
Right. Yeah.
Alongside the medical deterioration came a physical deterioration that became increasingly visible and increasingly discussed by people who spent time around Josh in person. He had been wearing the same pair of green pants for close to a month at one point during his travels. He was not washing his clothes. He was not showering with any regularity. In a conversation captured and circulated online, Mr. Based and another person described the smell that Josh carried as resembling wet hay, a smell they associated with homeless individuals they had encountered. One of them noted that Josh's fingernails were caked so thickly with dirt they looked two-toned. Mr. Bass confirmed he had offered Josh $1,000 to take a private shower at his apartment during a stream, and that Josh had refused. This is what daily alcoholism at the level Josh was maintaining it does to a person. The drinking was not a personality quirk or a brand choice at this point. It was a physiological state he could not exit cleanly. People who observed him when he had not been drinking described visible shaking. Physical dependency on alcohol is a medically serious condition, where cessation without supervision can be fatal. Josh's body had crossed that line. Josh also live-streamed himself on the toilet during one broadcast, appeared to defecate on stream, and left without washing his hands while still carrying his drink into the bathroom. If the fish incident raised questions about his judgment, scenes like these raised questions about whether the concept of judgment had any operational meaning in his daily life anymore. On a separate occasion, during what was framed as a date show, a woman pointed directly at his nails and told him they looked nasty. Josh insisted he was clean. He then attempted to use a nail clipper on camera and could not manage it properly. The contrast between his proclamations about being the king of New York, making $400,000 a year, and the image of a man who could not clip his own nails was not lost on anyone watching. In early 2024, Josh was arrested for subway surfing, an activity that involves hanging off the outside of a moving subway car. He was also drinking at the time. He was released with what appeared to be a warning, but the incident added another entry to a behavioral record that was beginning to look less like a collection of individual bad decisions and more like an unbroken pattern. Around the same time, Josh began claiming income figures that escalated wildly depending on the context. On streams where people called him broke, he said he made $5,000 a month. When that number drew mockery, he said $60,000 a year. When confrontations pushed him further, the number jumped to $100,000, then $400,000, and at various points, he claimed $1 million.
Josh is a broke boy, sent $3. Josh is
I make $5,000 a month.
Josh is a broke boy. 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 Josh is poor.
I make $5,000 a month, bitch. You can't. You. What do you make? You're living off of your parents' allowance. I make more money than you.
The variance across these claims, made weeks apart in front of live audiences, suggested that whatever number he actually made, accuracy was not the point. The point was winning the argument in the moment. Every time someone implied he was broke or unsuccessful, a new and larger number appeared, as if the income figure was a weapon rather than a fact. What made this especially revealing was the context surrounding these claims. In the same period, he was announcing a $400,000 annual income. People who had been on his tours described him as being unable to pay for his own food. A fellow creator noted on stream that during a collab, Josh could not buy his own tacos. Mr. Baist's associates controlling his streaming accounts had complete access to his finances, and by multiple accounts were taking a significant share of what came in. The ego the income claims were protecting was real, even if the numbers were not. Josh had grown up with nothing, had lost his mother young, had spent his teens in a city he did not know, and had somehow turned himself into someone with a Times Square billboard and 2.5 million followers. That meant something to him. More than that, it meant he was not the person who had to put the fries in the bag. The fury every time someone said that phrase was not just a reaction to a taunt. It was a reaction to the specific fear that the taunt might be closer to the truth than the billboard. And as the money flowed through other people's accounts and the pancreatitis went untreated, and the clothes went unwashed, that fear had more basis in reality than Josh was ever willing to admit on camera. The Dubai deportation became one of the cleaner illustrations of how Josh's situation had started to generate real-world consequences beyond the medical. He boarded a flight from JFK, spent time drinking in the airport before takeoff, had more drinks on the plane, landed in the UAE, and was not permitted to leave the airport. Immigration had received letters from online detractors documenting his behavioral history, and the UAE authorities declined to admit him. He was put on the next flight back to New York after roughly 18 hours in the terminal. His public response was to announce that future international trips would not be disclosed in advance to prevent the same thing from happening again. What he did not say, and apparently did not consider, was that the letters those detractors sent were only effective because everything in them was documented and verifiable. There was simply too much footage of exactly the behavior they described to dismiss the complaints as fabricated. The trolls did not invent anything, they just organized the archive.
I made it back to the US. I'm back in New York. From here on now, future international vacations won't be announced.
Within days, he had announced another international trip and refused to say where he was going. The lesson he took from being deported was not to reconsider the behavior that made the deportation possible. The lesson he took was to be less transparent about his travel plans. That gap between what actually happened and what Josh was willing to learn from it had been present since the fish incident. By this point, it had calcified into a permanent feature of who he was.
I'm going to travel internationally next week on the 17th. but I can't tell you where I'm going until I get there. I'm gonna surprise you.
The night he returned to New York from the deportation was documented on stream. He immediately got into a confrontation with trolls who showed up outside Mr. Base's building, kicked a car, threw objects into the street, and then ran back inside screaming that he made $1,000 a year. The deportation had been that morning. The meltdown was that night. Nothing had changed.
You got kicked out of Dubai, you Whoa, 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 whoa. Go. Just threw water at you? Go get his license plate. Get his license plate. Call the cops on him. Get his license plate. Get their license plate and report them.
At one point, a trip to St. Louis included what was described publicly as Josh going to see a therapist or counselor about his drinking. The building they drove to appeared to outside observers to have been closed for years. The therapist was reached by phone. That person turned out to know the name of the persons accompanying Josh, which is not standard practice for a random outpatient counselor. The call was, by most readings, not genuine. He took what had just been described as a therapy session and used it as the setup for an impromptu speech to a group of children at a stadium in St. Louis. He explained to them that he preferred being a moderate drinker to being sober, that AA would just tell him to stop, and that alcohol helped him manage his feelings. He was addressing children. He was telling them the thing that kept him from dealing with his life was also the thing he refused to let go of, and the person who had arranged the entire trip was standing next to him filming it.
Trying to cut back on my drinking, but I'm not willing to abstain completely. If I drink too much, I wake up and my hands are shaking.
Not good.
I'm probably having withdrawals.
Yes.
Be a moderate drinker, then be sober. You know what I'm saying? Like if you go to an AA meeting, they're gonna tell you can't drink anymore because the drinking kind of numbs my emotions.
By late 2024 and into 2025, observers began noting that the content had become repetitive in a way that even the most dedicated corner of the World of T-Shirts community found hard to sustain interest in. The freakouts happened on a schedule. The put the fries in the bag triggers had become so predictable that people knew exactly what would happen before it did. The meltdowns were the same meltdown. The travel destinations changed, but the pattern did not. Josh's TikTok view counts began to dip. He had moved to gambling streams in an attempt to find new revenue, which commentators uniformly described as miserable to watch. To put it bluntly, Josh had morphed into the ultimate non-10 streamer, someone who just turns on the camera and looks at his phone without doing a single thing, and the audience had started to notice. The light that had made the Empire State of Mind video work, whatever strange combination of earnestness and obliviousness had made him compelling in 2021, had dimmed visibly. He did not seem to be having fun. He seemed to be running through a script he was exhausted by but could not step out of because stopping meant losing the income that funded the hotel rooms, the flights, and the drinks. When he returned to New York City during one visit and stood near the spot where he had filmed the Empire State of Mind video, the moment read differently than it would have 3 years earlier. Not triumphant, not nostalgic in a fun way. Just a man standing in a place where something good had happened to him once, surrounded by people filming him either because they wanted a reaction clip or because they still, somehow, cared what happened to him. He could not even remember his own promotional line during a stream shoot in New York. The team around him made him do it, take after take 4 or 5 times in a row, and he kept losing the words. The guy who once sang an Alicia Keys verse in the middle of Times Square to 30 million people could not hold on to a 10-second promotional sentence. That is not a joke at his expense. That is what sustained heavy alcohol use does to the brain over a period of years. The people still orbiting him by this point were not the people he had started with. The grandfather was calling strangers out of worry. The fans who had genuinely rooted for him had mostly moved on. What was left was a rotating cast of orbiters with their own cameras and their own interest in whatever reaction he would produce next, and a trolling ecosystem that had turned his misery into a genre. Joshua Block did not set out to become a cautionary tale. He set out to be self-employed, to carve out a life life using the specific and genuinely unusual combination of qualities he had. And for a moment, that actually worked. The 30 million views were real. The Times Square billboard was real. The people who thought it was fun to watch him were real. And some of them actually cared whether he made it. What also became real across years of documented footage was an addiction that was accelerating while the people around him profited from it. A set of enablers who had their own reasons for keeping him exactly where he was. A trolling ecosystem that had turned his misery into a genre of entertainment, and a body that had already started to give out well before anyone involved seemed willing to treat that as the emergency it was. The World of T-Shirts community has a phrase they use when things get particularly bad. They call it the decline arc. But the decline arc was never about the content. It was always about the person inside the content. A 23-year-old autistic man with no parents, a grandfather who was worried about him from a distance, a dependency on alcohol he himself admitted was the only thing standing between him and having to feel his life, and no shortage of people who were happy to film whatever came next. The King of New York is still out there, still traveling, still drinking, still running from people screaming the same phrase at him in every city and country he visits. The blood alcohol reading keeps going up. The view counts keep going down. And somewhere in between those two numbers is a person who was genuinely funny once, whose deadpan stare made 30 million people watch him sing in Times Square, and who deserved considerably better than what the people around him gave him.